Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Wes Bunn and I'm here with Grayson Edge, and we are back to talk about Sequencer. I know Grayson and some of the other fellows were on last week giving you a quick look at the Sequencer editor and all the cool things that it can do for your cinematic needs. And we're back again here today to answer some of the questions that we didn't get to last time, as well as show you some of the other features that we didn't get a chance to show you, that being the camera rig and the rail system and some other things that can help you achieve your goals with your cinematic sequences. Before we get started, though, there's some things that I wanted to discuss with the learning resources side of things, kind of tell you where we're going with our learning resources, kind of point out some things that I've noticed with the current learning resources. So we're going to do that first, and then we'll jump into a sample project that was created. You may have seen some of the screenshots on the documentation. We created a sample cinematic sequence. We're going to take a look at that. And we're going to have Grayson here kind of pick it apart and point out all of the areas where I kind of messed up. So sort of the student and teacher kind of ebb and flow we're going to do in this session here. So we're going to take a look at that, and he's going to show us some tips and tricks and things to improve your cinematic sequences. I know I've already learned a lot in talking with him off camera, so he's going to parlay that knowledge onto you as well. And then we'll wrap the session with a Q&A. There's, like I said, a ton of questions that you guys had from the previous stream, as well as some questions kind of rolling in. If you have any questions during the Twitch stream, feel free to get those in the chat, and one of our guys on our team will let us know that they're there, and we'll get to those at the end. So let's first talk about some learning resources here. I'm going to hop off screen for just a second and drag this into the viewport here. If Shelly could put that up for me. Nice transition there. So we do have some Sequencer documentation, I believe, before 4.11 launched. It wasn't actually in the sidebar here, so a lot of people didn't know that there was Sequencer documentation. You can also search for it from the main docs.unrealengine.com page. If you search for Sequencer on the documentation tab, you'll get, this should be the top link there, and this is the main Sequencer editor landing page. It has an overview. If you click on this, it'll give you an overview of Sequencer as a whole. There's also the editor reference, which kind of breaks down the UI elements and everything you need to know about that. And then there's also a ton of how-tos that I created. There's some beginner, intermediate, and advanced ones. I wanted to talk about this for a second because it's been brought to my attention that some of these how-tos may not accurately reflect what's in the 4.11 branch, such as recording gameplay and the Sequencer viewports here. So if I click on that real quick, if you've tried to do this, you are correct in that you are assuming that this is not showing there. I just looked at this today. What happened was we created this documentation just before GDC a couple weeks ago, and it was a big push to get a lot of documentation out. The build that I was working on had some of this stuff in there, and then at the last minute, I think some of these features were pulled out just because they weren't quite ready for prime time yet. They worked, but there were some things that the team is still working on to kind of fine tune, so they didn't feel that they were ready to show just yet. So you're getting a sneak peek here with some of these how-tos. They do walk you through the steps and when those come online. And in fact, you can actually go to GitHub if you want and retrieve the build there that does have some of these things in it. But with the launcher version, the 4.11.1, some of these aspects aren't in there. So you are correct. I will be updating this documentation. It does say that this feature is currently undergoing development and may not work as expected or may not work at all because it's not in there. But that's something that's coming, and we'll update the documentation to reflect which ones are current, which ones are in the pipe, and so forth. So I just wanted to point that out. Again, if you haven't worked with Sequencer at all, most of these should work to get you started and get you up and running. As far as moving forward with learning resources, just like we do with all the other learning resource materials, we'll have tutorial series. I'm actually going to be working on a tutorial series where we take some of the Infinity Blade assets and create a cutscene from scratch, and we'll walk through that whole process together. We're also going to be at ECGC next week if you're in the Raleigh area, where I'll be giving a talk on Thursday. I believe it's in the afternoon. I don't have the actual time, but we'll get that in the forum post, the actual time. But I'll be giving a talk on Sequencer there as well. So there's that to look forward to. And we potentially may have a project. We haven't quite locked down what type of project we would include a cinematic sequence in, but that's something that we're currently investigating as well. So if you're familiar with all the other forms of documentation that we have, we're going to kind of parallel that with Sequencer as well. And we're going to do Twitch streams, and we're going to do other things like that as well. So that is the learning resources material. Let me drag this off screen here. What we'll do now is take a look at a sample project. I believe it's up on screen right now. This sample project is something, like I said, I created about a month ago, I guess. When I first got my hands on Sequencer, I had no experience with Sequencer, a little bit of experience with Matinee. It's by no means perfect, but take a quick look at it, and then what we'll do is we'll have Grayson here kind of chime in on some things that he would have done differently. We'll take a look at the project and kind of see how some of the things were set up to answer some of your questions as well. But let's just take a quick look. So if I play in the editor here. So it's just using the Infinity Blade assets, which are available for free on the marketplace. We'll show you where to get those if you are new to that. We can show you where you get your hands on that. And it's just a simple fly through here. And Grayson will show you one of the things to make this a little bit easier. Did it just crash right there? That would be really awesome. Oh, it didn't. Just hitching a little bit. I was about to say that would be awesome.
That's the almost crash, right? It almost gets there.
Right. I'm not sure where that little ball is right there. I just
That's
that too.
So that's actually the player. Yeah, pawn.
Yeah,
a lot of times, a witness pawn. That's something we should probably work on because it appears everywhere all the time.
Glad I'm not the only one. So yeah, this took about a day or so, just kind of playing around with some of the Infinity Blade assets. Ton of assets for you to work with to create an animation sequence. Kind of slowed down time here. I know there was a question about how to do translation, kind of like you saw there, the character jumped from one location to another. You can kind of take a look at how that was set up. It's basically using an animation track and a transform track, so we'll show that as well.
One of the other things we'll talk about too is cinematic process and some very basic rules on how you can improve the quality of your cinematics in terms of the lines of action and stuff. But we'll get into that later.
Yeah, I think that's going to be very important. Not only knowing how to use the tool, but the whys of the tool. On our side, we can teach you, the whats and how to set everything up. But I think this session here is going to be, and I'd like to do more of these as well.
Yeah.
With Grayson here is the why. Why do you do things the way you do, and how do you achieve the optimal cinematic experience? So.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's just about over here. I think it's a little over a minute or two for the scene. It's just a little bit longer than we wanted to create for this session, so we're just going to use the project. We were going to try to create a sequence from scratch, but I figured this would be much more beneficial just to have his insight since we have him here. So that is the scene there. We kind of fade out at the end as we look up into the sky and escape.
Off into the sunset.
All right, so we are working in 4.12 here because there are some features that are in here that aren't in the 4.11 release. Currently trying to find out if we can get some of these features implemented in incremental builds, so for 4.11, 1, 2, 3, etc. before the official 4.12 release. I don't have an answer for that yet, but again, you can get this stuff off of GitHub, and we'll try to link that in the thread post as well. So I'm going to pass it over to Grayson here so he can kind of pick apart my little cutscene here, and we'll go from there.
All right. So yeah, just kind of walk me through some of this stuff if I'm missing any of this.
All right.
But overall, let's just start off by opening up the sequence. And what did you call this one?
The example trailer.
Example trailer. Okay.
So it should be on the sequencer tab there.
Cool. And then, so if we kind of scrub through here. Let me go into game mode first. So I'm sure most of all you know this by now, but you can toggle the game mode with the G key. Mm-hmm. This is a nice path, and I think that we could do a couple things differently here. One of the things when we're trying to create cinematic content is keep the camera from doing too much swimminess and velocity changes. So when you do a fly through, a lot of times what you want is a constant, nice, smooth velocity through a level or through an area. And so I'm going to show you one of the solutions we came up to do, to fix those type of problems and to make it easier for the end user to create, pretty smooth cameras. Another thing, this is just more context, but another thing you could do is instead of doing a fly through, you could always do some really, really pretty opening shots, establishing shots that you use for cuts. So this, what we did here was pretty cool. So I'll try to show you some of the things that we can do. Using our new rail, something called the new rail system.
Yes.
And do you want me to just go ahead and show that?
Yeah, actually, we dive into that sequence real quick.
Sure.
So this, if you kind of, so initially this was created, the path here that you're seeing, that you'll see here is all keyframed. Yeah, so if you scrub through, it's all keyframed the position of the camera. So I move the position and then move the camera and then keyframe, move, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
That was before the rail system came in. And
Yeah.
with the rail system, it's so much easier to achieve something like this. You don't have to keyframe it every frame. You put it on a rail, let it go, and then you keyframe the position of the camera that you want.
Yeah.
So it's a lot easier. And this is something that we didn't show, I believe, in Thursday's stream. So we can kind of show how you would set it up. We won't necessarily replicate this whole thing here, but we can show you how easy to set something like that up.
Yeah, and as he just said, I mean, he did this all through hand, and that's traditionally what we'll do. We have two methods. One, we key it all by hand, or we go into a program like Maya, and we create the camera in Maya and then import it in. And either one of those, can take some time. One of the new features we've got here is our rail, as a rail system. And let me unhide that, yeah. So just so you can kind of understand how these rails work, in traditional movie making, if you want to do a camera shot that moves through the environment, you can do, straight rail. It's literally a set of tracks, kind of like train tracks that a camera can move along. And you can, sometimes you bend those rails to get nice circular shots. And so recently I've been using this tool like crazy for all of our, for a lot of cinematics. Mm-hmm. And it basically just lets you modify your shots.
And you just select a keyframe and alt drag it out?
Yep. And you can bend that. And so what we would do, if you extrapolate how this would work, we'll take this rail and we'll basically put it all the way through the level. Mm-hmm. So the other advantage, and then basically we attach a cinematic camera to it. You want me to show them how to do that? Or
you can, if you like, real quick. Okay. It shouldn't be too hard. Yeah, again, these are not going to be in 4.11. Your build that you're working off of right now, again, we are in 4.12, but these are the features that are coming. So this is kind of a sneak peek and let you guys see what it is we're working on. I thought these features are going to be in the 4.11 release, but it doesn't look like we quite made it.
The camera. Anyway, so what you do is you basically attach one of these cameras to here, and then you zero out the camera, and it'll sit on top of here, like that, basically.
Yeah, you could probably do it more.
The problem is the screen here is kind of small. My eyes are kind of old, so it's a little hard to see everything. But basically what happens is once you attach it, then you're able to drive that camera along the rail, which is really cool.
And you can modify that through Blueprint too as well.
Yeah. And then, so as that thing goes, it's got this, you can set a constant velocity. So in the past, when you keyframed it, you'd have to worry about the camera moving forward and moving back in terms of velocity. But what the great thing about this is it maintains this constant velocity, and then you can just focus on framing things up properly.
Awesome.
That's how that works.
Cool. You want to dive back into some more critiques here? I think there was another one on like the crane. You would do that on the stairs over there, maybe as an establishing shot. Yeah,
we can do that. So this is another. Let me jump out of here. And feel free to coach me if you can, wherever the hell we are in here. This is another awesome tool that came along with Sequencer, and it's another kind of real world camera setup. So we can basically put in cranes and create crane shots in these levels now. Let me just type this in and we'll add one here.
It's right there, cinematic.
Yeah. Okay. So you can kind of it's actually a three.
It literally looks like a crane.
A three-dimensional representation of this, and as a funny story here, when we first had these created, the actual crane was like a 10 million polygon mesh that we're like, we probably can't use that for real-time cinematic stuff. So it got reduced down to this, but it's still functionally you can kind of see how it works here. Yeah. So let me grab a cinematic camera, and we will attach this one. Yeah. Because I can actually see this one a little better.
And you guys talked about these as well in the previous stream and all the lens settings and things like that you can change.
Yeah.
These things are awesome.
Okay, so let's do this. We're going to attach to. You go down here. You could also do it in the world outliner if you're used to attaching things through there. But you click on the actor, and it should be attached now. You can see it here. Mm-hmm. And then what we'll do is zero out that camera, and you can see it pops to the head of the crane there.
Nice.
The swivel head. And these are zeroed out as well, so we're all set to go. And let me.
You can hop into that.
Is this one? Is it in there? Okay, cool.
In there. So there's only just one camera in here right now.
All right, so I'm going to just collapse this guy here, and then I'm going to add the rail. And actually, can we delete the shots thing over here? Okay. This is a track that we didn't need, so we're gonna get rid of that, and we're going to add the rail. Add the crane in here.
Yep.
All right, and then add this guy in there. And then And so now we'll be able to see through, well, when we jump back out of the sequence, we'll be able to see through the camera here. Let's just get out here. I think we were in a fade track, and that's why I did that. Okay. So let me pop back out. And then in this sequence, we can set properties for the pitch of the camera, or for the pitch of the, let me see here, on the rail. And you can go over here in the details panel. You can add it through here, through the add track, but I think it's a little bit easier just to go here. This is a new feature in Sequencer, which is really cool too. Yeah. So you can add pitch and you can add yaw, and it'll automatically populate the track there with the pitch and yaw properties. And so let's start with the crane a little bit more pitched up.
Cool. That's actually moving too.
Yeah. So you can kind of see while this, like if you're into cinematics and stuff, this is really exciting. Yeah. And it's also great for in-game cutscenes and stuff like that. So. And then the other one is yaw. So let's just start off with yaw and the current kind of framing as it is, and we should be able to preview through the camera here. Yeah. And let me just adjust we'll just leave the depth of field kind of as is for now. Let's just tune it up here a little bit, sharpen it up. Okay, so what we're going to do is with this crane, this is more like an establishing shot for a scene. So I'm going to go up here to the rail.
The camera?
Yeah, there it is. Okay, right there. Again, my eyes. I apologize, everybody. I need to get some glasses, right? So we're going to pitch up a little bit, and then we're also going to move the crane over a little bit as well, like that. Okay, and then the last thing we're going to do in here is use the camera transform. Let's set it initially to here. Hope this is making sense to everybody. We'll leave that camera transform as it is there, and then we go in, and we're just going to center up the camera for framing. There, a little bit more, so we just have a little bit of motion on there like that. I'm doing this live, so hopefully it all turns out all right.
And the shortcuts you're using for adding keyframes, look at that.
So
it was S to add?
S. Yeah, S is a keyframe. Or you can just use this thing down here, which is kind of cool.
I believe, it's also in the documentation. There's like Shift E, Shift, what are the other ones? I can't remember. I know that's I wrote the documentation for it, but I can't recollect what they are offhand. But there's some shortcuts you could use for adding different forms of transform, whether it's rotation or scale or location. Those shortcuts.
One other thing I'd probably do here, this is a great opportunity to show how we can do some focusing as well. Let's just go for it with the focus setting here.
Oh, on your Sim camera?
The new tool that we got for this, and we just select on the background, and it brings it into focus.
Yeah, at the time I created this, I don't think Sim cameras are in yet, and this is awesome.
So we should see a focus shift here if I did it properly, which I didn't, but whatever. I did something wrong. All right. Let me try it one more time, and if I don't get it this time, it means I got camera shyness or something here. Right there? Yeah. Should add it? Oh. Yeah. That value, so that should do it. We should see a focus pull on the end there. Yeah, okay, so that worked. This is a little less out of focus, this is more in focus. That's a basic establishing shot you can use for cinematics. Let me show one other thing, the aspect ratio.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So one other thing we like to do in film or in movie making or whatever, cinematics, is playing with the aspect ratio of shots. And then basically you can use something called 2:3:5 aspect ratio, anamorphic, I believe it is. And you can make scenes look a little bit cooler. And I'll just show you really quickly how this works. We can go down here under the lens setting, under the film back settings. And right now, if you look at sensor aspect ratio, it's 1.777. That's like the default, like the old legacy camera from Unreal. Okay. It's 177. And I think if we shift that down to whatever, something like, let's just try 18. It goes to, let's see, it was 16. 2.5. So let's just try 14. And then now we're at 2.5. Anyway, so you could play around with that, but you can kind of see how your aspect ratio is changing there. And you can see it's more horizontal. Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to go ahead and wind this up a little bit more so you get a sense for that. And so to me, That that looks a little better. It looks a little more cinematic.
Oh yeah.
So that kind of covers some of that. Cool. All right, what else?
Let's talk about the skeletal mesh settings. No.
Oh, our
One
favorite.
issue, that everybody
favorite
runs. I'm
skeleton
glad.
mesh.
Yeah, you'll see why in a moment here. This issue that I ran into that a lot of people seem to do. I didn't even know it was a setting there. But on this actor here, as he transitioned to this scene here, you see that the character kind of pops a little bit.
Well, of course, it's not happening so bad here, but I guess I'll go ahead
You
and
want to give
explain.
the context?
Yeah,
of it?
it doesn't always happen. Sometimes it does. But like when we were working on the Paragon trailer, one of the most common things we had to do was set this this flag on skeletal meshes, and it can cause all kinds of problems with skeletal meshes in cinematics.
Mm-hmm.
And so let me just see something here when we do that. But basically, if you select I would recommend this if you're going to make cinematics. I would highly recommend you go in and look for this flag in the skeletal mesh, and it should prevent some what basically appears to be bounding box or popping issues. So under skeletal mesh, if you get down here at the very bottom, there's a mesh component update, and you want to set it to always tick bones. Always tick poses and refresh bones, and that will fix a lot of popping that you see. And the reason that's in there is by default for performance reasons, it's disabled, and it keeps stuff from rendering off screen that shouldn't be. But when it comes to cinematics, you absolutely need that, because sometimes you have the camera pretty low, and you're showing stuff. That it just happens more often.
Yeah.
So.
More noticeable.
Yeah. Anyway, but that's the magic flag. Give it a shot.
Good to know.
Okay.
Something I didn't know. Let's see what else. I could talk a little bit about composition. Some of the shots that I chose here, I just chose them because I thought they looked cool without going into any compositional reasoning. I did take some photography classes back in the day, so I know a little bit about rule of thirds and leading lines and things like that. The whys of composition is something that we could probably talk about here with one of these upcoming shots. I think like the overhead shot was one of them.
Oh, you want me to look at this one right here? This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe that one.
So, and also, let's go back to this too, because there's a little tip I can give on that one too. So for this thing, this is a little more advanced for cinematics, and you may, if you're really interested in cinematics or making your cutscenes better for in-game settings and stuff, I'd look up something called lines of action or line of action.
Okay.
And I think it'll really help you understand how scenes can be set up. And basically for this, we try to shoot along a line of action. So if it's hard to illustrate here, but basically, if you take this character and these two characters and you drew a line straight between them, you would try to shoot from one side, from one hemisphere or the other side of that line, and stick to that side of the line. Okay. And then there are rules for when you cross the camera over these lines. Right. But what it does, there are two things that it does. One, it keeps a constant screen language so people understand where the characters are in relationship to each other and the environment. And the other thing it does is it makes some of your decision making a little easier, so you don't have to figure out, where in 360 where this camera would be. It actually splits those decisions in half. Okay. So it helps with efficiency and stuff. So for this cutscene, one of the things I recommended was just going in here. That one? Yep. Okay. What camera are we on? Camera 2?
Camera 2. Yep.
Camera 2. So instead of shooting it from this side here, I probably would have done that. And that actually obeys that line of action. So it's just something to look up. But when you're making scenes, I think it's definitely worth learning this stuff. And then, in real filmmaking, this is broken all the time, but there's usually a reason why the director or the group is, making a decision to break those lines. And so, anyway, that's...
I would say the other thing you could probably show real quick if you hop out of Pilot here and go to the cinematic perspective. Yeah. Drop down cinematic viewport.
Oh, our cinematic viewport.
Yeah, this is not in 411. Did you guys show this last time?
We did.
You did? Okay. Did you talk about like the lines and stuff?
Yeah.
So you could throw up the grid lines to kind of get the composition for rule of thirds.
Absolutely.
And things like that for setting up that shot, like that overhead shot. You kind of had it set it up along those two lines, which is
we can go back
something that I kind of tried to do.
No, it's cool. I think that's cool.
Yeah, so see, there are like ones on this side, ones on that side.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you flip the camera, you kind of did that instinctively without even having these lines there. You set it up like that, so it's just kind of interesting to see that.
Yeah,
I just
yeah,
noticed
after a while,
you're
it
thinking of
gets,
that
it
already.
gets
It's kinda
ingrained
cool.
in your mind.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah,
Yeah.
another point on it. Just try to look it up. Lines of action, line of action, and I think you might learn a little bit about how cinematics, your stuff,
Cool.
cinematics
I'll
might be
look that
able to be improved. Do you mind if we jump back here
Yeah,
just for
go
a
back to
second?
the other guy.
This guy here, again, which camera is that? Is camera 1?
Yes.
Okay, so I would say, and somebody taught me this a long time ago, and I think you'll see it a lot in cinematics. You've got a big monster, and you're shooting that monster from this angle. He looks pretty tiny. So if you take the camera, you lower it, and you put it kind of closer to the monster's feet or whatever, it's like you get a much bigger sense of that creature.
Yeah.
And then we're using the tool again here to kind of frame up to frame up the shot. So anyway, that's just something I thought might be useful, especially for younger guys who are doing stuff. The other thing we'd probably do is we try to stay, if possible, either straight on the character or a little bit over here on this side, because again, if you pull out, this is our line of action between these two guys, but we're trying to stay in those 2 points.
Yeah.
For a shortcut scene. Okay.
Sure.
Cool. And do you think it's time to look at the setup stuff next in terms of how this was, like the overall scene, like these two shots?
Oh, yeah. You could do that. Talk
Think
about
it's worth
that. Yeah.
it?
So
Okay.
from a workflow perspective, going into this, I had no intention of collaboration on this. It was just my own personal pet project. But when you're collaborating with others, it's some things that you're probably going to want to keep in mind when setting up your shots in your project, so that when they come in, it's easier for them to discern what's happening at a time. So we wanted to talk about that here.
Yeah, so I mean, we've gotten used to certain workflows, and I think there's some that work better than others, but there may be a case where it's like, this is a better workflow. So if it works better for you, great. You know, it's cool. But one of the things we constantly run into in game development stuff is that, like, we've got a lot of people working on a single thing, and the more simplistic, basically exactly what you just said, the more simplistic it is to get in there and understand immediately what's happening, the better. And even if you're working alone, I think this is a pretty good workflow to consider. So we're using the master sequencer thing here for basically to store all our shots. Exactly, to store all the shots. And right now there's 2 shots that are stored here, but you don't see the actual cut, so it's hard. If I wanted to rearrange those, or I wanted to analyze just that shot, it's a little hard to distinguish where that's being. It's a little hard to figure out where that cut actually happens here. And so to remedy that, I think what we'll probably do is go in here. We could either split the shot, literally split the shot, and modify it, or we can duplicate it. In this case, since it's already set up like this, this is how I'd probably fix it. Is I'd probably duplicate the shot, and we'll name it something else here. Technically, we would probably want to make a new folder for the shot. Like call it shot 15 and then make a new folder under shot 10. But for now, let's just do it this way. And then we can go in here and let me edit this shot.
There it is.
All right, cool. I'm gonna try to be frame accurate. This may not be perfect, but at least it's better than nothing. So
yeah, the intent when I created this was to break up each of the core sections of this sequence, and then if you dove into one of those, that's its own little sequence where it has all those cuts and everything there. But from a high level perspective, I could see what you're saying. If somebody else comes in and looks at it, they would have to dive into each sequence to see those cuts.
So what is that shot we made? 15?
15, yeah.
Can you see it here?
Yeah, bottom right, that's it.
Bottom right, that's it? Okay.
And
I think it probably
should added it at the end. It also added it right there too. So.
Is it there?
Yep.
Okay,
should
cool.
be it.
So if we pull that over, and then basically just slide that over like that. Is that right?
Yeah, so it should be the same.
Yeah.
But now you can see the.
Now you can see the different shots, which is it helps a lot. And then that way, if you're like, oh man, I'd like a couple more frames on the end of this thing as he's coming over, all you do is just roll it over, this way here. It's just a little easier to work with. I'm gonna pull this stuff over back.
Kill that last one too.
Is that
Yeah.
duplicate? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, so that just a quick workflow tip that might be helpful to you. Cool. All right.
Yeah. And then speaking of workflows too, did you guys touch on the subscenes track last time? There's
Subsequences a little bit. Yeah, not
you
too,
did
too much.
okay.
But
Yeah, there is a documentation page I wrote on this, especially if you're working with VFX guys, animators, level designers, etc. People working with the cameras for your cutscenes. If they're all individual people, you could use the subscenes track, and each person can have their own track for the sequence, and they can all be working on it independently without affecting each other's works. And there's a doc page I wrote on this, and I know subscene tracks work. So if you want to check that out for another workflow, kind of like what he was talking about, you can use that as well.
It's from a production standpoint. Like when we've gotten into creating these large cinematics in the past, we've gotten into a lot of bottlenecks, and so one guy gets the entire cinematic, and then everybody's waiting on this one guy or lady to finish up what they're doing, and it can be time killer. And so now exactly what you're saying, it's awesome because we can add in lights, we can add in effects, audio, stuff like that, and everybody can work on a single shot or multiple shots at a time. So it definitely clears up workflows, which is great.
What else do we want to talk about? Accounting for animation translation. You want to talk about this?
Yeah, it's all yours, man.
All right, let's talk about it.
I'll talk with you, but
All right,
I think you know where the stuff is in there.
Yeah. So let's hop up here. So one of the things that I ran into an issue when setting up this scene was accounting for animations where a character has translation built into the animation, and then following it up with an animation that translation is back at its root bone. So picture you have a character kind of like walking forward a little bit. Now his root bone is going to stay, but the translation is built into the animation, so the character moves forward. However, when you queue up the next animation, if you wanted the animation to play at the end position of your walk, for example, the root bone is still back here. So when you play that next animation, the guy pops back to this position. And I ran into that a lot when I was trying to set this up. And there's ways around that. Let's see if I can find a good example of this in this scene here. There's ways around that, and I kind of wanted to talk about some of the things you can do, some of the tips and tricks to do that. The first is with using camera cuts, anything you can do to hide those transitions. That's one method that you could use to do that.
I mean, I can, if I can jump in here just for 2 seconds. I mean, I think in a real everyday usage case and for game development stuff, you're trying to do previs for a scene or trying to pre-visualize a scene, or even just create an in-game cinematic. And because of time and resources, especially on smaller projects, you don't have full animation. And so what you have to do sometimes is use the animations that you have and cut around the ugly spots. So if you don't have a complete animation, sometimes you have to cut out early and show it. So eventually, and maybe I'm jumping ahead, eventually we plan on making sure there are full set of tools to deal with animation blending and making it easier for people to even create animations potentially.
One of the examples right here. So let's see if I can show these. Oh, I'm in. That's pretty. Camera is So what's happening here? We have two animations. We have this animation where the character in purple here, the charge start, it kind of bends down, so he takes a step back. So and gets into this position. The next animation is the jump, which starts from that position there. Because there's built-in translation in this movement here, what I ended up having to do was adjust the transform to account for that. So I kind of warp him back a little bit. Fortunately, I lined this one up so it's not as noticeable, but you could see the cursor there in the middle of this part right here. You see it jump to that position. And this is what I was talking about, the issue that I was running into.
And eventually this, I think, will be much easier to blend.
Yeah.
That's our goal because we need it. Everybody needs it. So, yeah, making it blend is going to be pretty important for everybody.
Yeah. So this actually is going to segue into the other thing that we could talk about. This came up as one of the questions. How would you do a situation where you have a character that's like on a wall, like Kalari, kind of doing a jump flip off the wall onto the ground? This is the way that I currently did it. I don't know if you want to chime in on this as well. This is how I did it. Just having this animation here is the jump, and then you're just using transform by keyframing it down to the location that I wanted to jump to. So it's just keyframed. All these keyframes here are my motion.
Here's a good tip for if you're doing this, if you want to do exactly what he's doing here, having a character jump down from a ledge or something like that. Whatever you do, I suggest don't do it in the final cinematic camera first.
Yeah.
Pull out exactly like he's got it here, look at it in the environment, and then get the character so that basically you want to see it from a little wider angle, so you get a sense of does the velocity feel right? And so usually we'll go through that a couple of times. We're going to do something like this where we're going to hand key it to make sure it feels right, and then we go and frame it up on the camera and make the final adjustments.
Sure. I think I said that as well too in the initial documentation that I have up there. Just things to consider. I think it's on the overview page, but yeah, one of the workflows you can take is to set up all of your scenes without cameras. Don't even worry about cameras. Just kind of set up all of your content, and then kind of go back and set up your cameras once you have everything in place.
It took me a long time to learn that lesson. So when I first started,
that was a tip from Max. So.
Yeah, that's good.
Put that to use. Yeah,
that's the way to do it.
Yeah. So yeah, this kind of answers one of the questions that I know one of you guys had, how to set something like this up. And we'll try to do one-off how-tos for things like this, just to kind of walk through it a little bit better. And we'll also incorporate it into one of the video series that we do down the road here. So we're about, what are we, 2:36? 30 minutes in. I think we're doing pretty good. Let's see.
You know, one other tip too for these curves and stuff. A lot of times, what I'll do is take a start point. You know, take your end point where you want the character to end up, and then just basically put a point right in the middle of that line, and then bend it. You know, bend the curve. Editor. Because you can try to do it. You know, from the start of the curve to the end of the curve. It's just I found that that's one of the easiest things to do.
Oh, okay.
Just bend it.
Yeah, my experience with the curve editor has not been that much. I need to dig in a little bit more. Maybe we can have a fancy one-on-one session talking about curve editor stuff.
Sure. Yeah, we got into it a little bit last week. Showed a little bit about it, but I think I think there's some real subtleties, and that's what the curve editor is about for the most part. Is a lot of subtlety, and I think that maybe we need to show some cases where how that subtlety works and why we do stuff the way we do. So yeah.
Cool. Let's see, we're about 30 minutes in, so let's try to get some Q&A. I know we have a bunch of questions from last time. Let's see if there's any new ones. Oh yeah, a bunch of new ones came in, so we got a ton of questions. We're going to try and get through those as quickly as we can. We'll start off with some of the ones that we missed from last week, so we'll start from there and just work our way down. First question we have is, what is planned for sequencer and cameras beyond this initial release in terms of features, camera types, and post effects? We got a response from one of our engineers, Max, who was on the previous stream. Basically, we didn't show any of the camera rig stuff last stream, which is what we showed here. So camera rail, the camera crane, those things are coming. I don't have a definitive date on when those are going to be. Also on the sim camera actor, there's a property for the actor to track. So that's news. That's what Max has said. As far as post-processing, there's something we're going to have to dig into a little bit more. Some of our rendering guys for a response on that. That could be something that we get on the forums in response to this question. But can you think of anything else on the camera itself for tracking?
For tracking, actually, I just remember we could, one thing, if we have time, we can always show is the camera animation stuff.
Oh,
we've got this really awesome new tool, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, I'll
go for it.
Sorry, guys. It's something we should show because it is pretty cool.
We'll get back to the questions. Keep your questions coming. We'll get to them. And whatever we don't get to in this Twitch stream, we'll throw those up on the forum in the response.
Where's this thing? Is this the shot where he lands? Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So to kind of set it up, what we're talking about here. In the past, when we wanted to show off camera animations that were like, for example, this guy jumps down, and when he lands, there's going to be an impact. There's going to be a little bit of camera shake. In the past, what we've done is manually hand keyed that, which I did.
You did
so
here, like kind of like a little shake. The camera when he lands.
And that is still absolutely effective. You can still do that if you're really good at hand keying stuff. You can do some fantastic stuff with that. That said, like what we're doing now is we have the ability to add a camera animation. Literally, just add a camera animation into the shot, so that all this stuff is you can either hand key it yourself in a separate, basically in Matinee or Sequencer, and then you can also do it in Maya if you want to do it in Maya, and so you can have a library of camera shakes and camera animations that you can bring in. So if you wanted to have a library of explosions or whatever, you can do that. Or even I'm getting a little deeper than I probably should be here, but whatever. The other thing you can do is take you can mocap a camera and get the subtle ambient motion of the camera, and then you can parent that or basically you just play it on the camera. In the past, there was a very not complex, but there was a somewhat complex process of attaching all the animation to a camera to get it to look like handheld motion. And so this bypasses all the time setup on this, and you can just add an animation really quickly. So
yeah, this is camera 3 we're looking at here.
okay, camera 3. And so I'll expand this out a little bit.
Let's see my keyframes for the movement that I added there.
Is that where he lands?
I believe so. Yeah, if you scrub it a little bit, that's what those.
All right,
just
cool.
moving up and down.
So that's pretty standard stuff for cinematics. When you're if you don't have these tools to work with, you just hand key the impact. And so our new way of doing this, or one of the additional ways of doing it, is we can just go up here. Makes it a lot easier, and you just add a camera animation to it, and we'll pull out these tracks here.
All my hand keyed jitter there.
And so you can see
it's there.
this is the new one here.
Yep.
And then the other thing that's really cool about, and this is just we haven't refined this at all in terms of making the visual of it. We're just trying to show you how it looks. The other awesome thing about these is that you can go in here and you can specify the play rate of that animation or play scale, and just to make things really obvious, you blend time, looping, all these other properties that you would get with traditional camera animations. But right now, let's just set the play scale up to 4, and make sure that got set. Yep. And so it should be really obvious now when this guy lands. Yeah, you can see the camera shake a lot.
Yeah. It's cool that you can right there on the fly just adjust those values to kind of get the effect that you want. And you can create these in Maya, and you can create them through Matinee still, right?
Through Matinee, yeah. And that's what basically a camera anim.
Sweet.
And then there's also some blueprint integration that's a little bit deeper. We don't need to get into that right now, but actually we can do that in here now. On the other side of this, just briefly explain this, we can do cinematic camera animations for handheld. And this is used when you like hypothetically, you've got a very close-up shot of a character, and you don't want it to have a completely locked-off camera that just sits there.
Yeah.
But if you want a little bit of ambient motion in that camera, you can use the same system. And
it's much easier just to add keyframe in.
yeah, and I'm going to show you very briefly here how that works. Just same process. This one we're just going to add the cinematic camera anim here, and I'll zoom out. So this is a camera motion that we captured in mocap, and you could create this on your own too if you're good at keyframing stuff. But can you see just a little bit of motion?
Yep.
Just a little bit, but that's
just subtle. It's not supposed to be overtly obvious. It's supposed to be there subconsciously. So that's cool.
Same thing here. Usually for this stuff we tune it down. Let's do it with 3 just so you can see. Back there. Oops. But yeah, you can see it's a lot more swimmy, more of a handheld look. So that's how that works. And so far, using this, I love it, man. It's been cool. Yeah, it's been really cool.
Very cool.
Okay.
Cool stuff. Awesome. All right, let's see. Let's get back to some more questions here. This one. How to import audio, working, scrubbing, and bake with movie export is the question. So reached out to our engineer on this one as well. He said that the audio doesn't get baked in with movie export, but that's something that they're exploring and looking into for a future release. I don't have time on that as well, but we know that you guys want it. We want it as well, so we're investigating the best way to do that. We'll also be looking into exporting edit decision lists, and that will contain references to shots and audio with specific cut points, so you could use that as well. Let's see. Next question. Do we always have to set a camera to player 0 for render movie working? Do you always have to set? No.
That's the render movie. Yeah. No. So usually what we do is we have game modes, and it's hard to know exactly without exactly usage case that everybody's using. But here's the traditional process for us. Like for example, in Paragon, something like that. If we want to render out a scene. We're able to open up the rendering tool and should be able to just kick out a cinematic if we're using cinematic cameras, and if everything's loaded up and set up properly. But usually what we do to bypass HUDs, because during Paragon there's always new stuff that's coming up. Sure. And so eventually we need a sequencer game mode that just says turn it all off except for what we want to see in our movie. And I've made a couple game modes for that locally on my machine. And so those are usually things that just pull out all the UI, pull out all that stuff. So that's one way of getting around it.
the best way to go
Yeah.
is to have a game mode just for your cinematic needs. That
Yeah.
you can turn all that stuff off rather than doing all individually.
And we've been asking for that. We need a cinematic game mode that we can easily set in the cinematic actor under the details, details properties.
Right.
So.
Let's see. Is it planned to introduce new hotkeys and make editing by keyboard more director friendly? There are some hotkeys that we kind of talked about earlier with the transform hotkeys, and there's some as well on the documentation pages. What were the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5s that we were talking about earlier? Actually?
So those are for keys, and to answer the initial question too, in a little more depth, I absolutely believe we're doing a lot more for hotkeys.
Yeah.
And the good thing is, like, I know all these hotkeys, but I don't know what they are. Unfortunately, I've gotten used to them, so I just started working with them, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But to answer your question about the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, those are different types of interpolation modes for the keyframes.
That's what it was.
And so one
On
you can
keyframe.
set to auto,
Yeah,
so it'll give a little more curvy. If you use the 4 key, it'll give you a linear.
Is it numpad or is it?
Should be either one of those. Might be numpad. It may. Oh, there you go.
Oh,
So it just changed.
Yeah.
So these are the ones that I usually use. 1 makes things curvy,
yes.
basically, and it's really dumbed down. So it just makes it curvy. 4
right.
is linear, and so that maintains a constant speed between 2 keys.
Cool.
And 5, constant speed between 2 keys. And then 5 is a constant keyframe, which means that it doesn't go anywhere. It stays locked.
Right.
And those 3 are the ones I use probably the most.
Right. And there's also some hotkeys here that we currently have. I actually noticed I made a mistake on one of these. Moving between keyframes, I put these 2 symbols because to me that made sense left and right, but it's actually comma and period. It's not shift and the actual, whatever these are, brackets for moving between keyframes.
And then the arrow keys, right, too?
So
you're talking about for,
let's see, yeah.
if you go up to the top
So
level.
here you should be able to, no.
I think if you
Top
click
level?
on the timeline, this is where it may get in these 2 right here. Does it go left and right? All right, I don't know. I think I've got, maybe I'm thinking of something else. I thought it did.
You need to have be in cinematic view.
I don't think so. It could be something configuration that's different on this machine or something. I blame the machine.
Yeah, right? Yeah, I'm not sure why. Of course, work in progress, right? There it is. So that's
Oh, yeah.
comma and period. It's not shift and whatever that is up there.
Hey, can I just try something real
Yeah,
quick?
it's not
just to
arrows.
see? It's not arrows, is
No.
it? All right, well, never mind. All right, I don't
It
know.
might have
That's
changed,
crazy.
actually.
Yeah,
It might have changed because the cinematic viewport
I
went
could
through.
swear I use it every day, but maybe not. All right.
Cinematic viewport went through different incarnations of
Yeah,
how it was going to be enabled until it ultimately didn't make it into 4.11, but it's there. It's just we're still fine tuning that. So, all work in progress, ladies and gentlemen. So let's see. Is sequencer per level? Is there a quick way to share between levels? So yeah, there's a how-to on this for level visibility, and in that how-to, actually, let me see if I can bring that up. We show how you can have different assets in one level. I'm not sure if I actually understand this question. Are they talking about an individual sequence asset in one level and in another level?
I think from the way I read it the first time through was that sequencer, unlike matinee, can reference actors that are in different levels than the sequencer is. And so it's cross-level. It allows you to do cross-level referencing.
Right.
And so that's pretty critical in terms of one of the differences in matinee, because in the old days, matinee could only reference the thing, any actor that was in its current level.
Right.
The only way to get around that was creating some type of script or moving all the actors into the same level. The sequencer is different. You can grab things from completely different levels.
Yeah, and actually, I do want to talk about this too. There's something else too that Max wanted me to bring up. So, what I have right here is the level visibility how-to. Real quickly, this is just showing how you can have things in different levels. Not sure if this was the question that they were asking, but there's another thing that we can talk about. So, things on the left here in one level, and then it kind of scrubs through and goes to the things on the right that are in another level. And I'm calling that through the level visibility track, pulling those things from different levels.
Yeah, and we use this all the time for optimization for between shots. So we want to hide one level, show another,
Right.
or when you're on a shot, you just want to show the level you're in, or even like deco actors in a scene or something like that. So
Yeah,
it's really useful.
the other thing that I was going to talk about is spawnables, and this is a hot topic right now internally because there's a lot of things that need to be considered with spawnables, how things work with spawnables. So I'm not actually sure if these are in right now. I think they are. But they are undergoing some changes internally right now. I know in 4.12 this is going to change, and Max told me to be sure that I mention that this is probably going to change the way that they work. So yeah, you can use spawnables.
They're pretty awesome. At some point, if we, it might be worth doing a special thing on these because they have so many applications.
Will we get tracking and color grading? So let's see, what did we say for this? Shoot, this is one that I need to actually answer off screen too as well. This is a rendering question.
As far as I know, just from being around the sequencer team, this is, I guess, an unofficial answer, if that's possible here. But from what I understand, that's our intent, is to be able to do post-process very easily. We can already do some of it with the post volume, but to be able to jump into sequencer, do all our work, post-work in sequencer, and not have to go out anywhere else and control it all through sequencer. So I would think so.
Okay. Will Matinee be deprecated or removed as soon as sequencer fully launches? Matinee will continue to exist. That was kind of my expectation as well.
Yeah, I think because everybody's been used to using it. Yeah. We have projects that's buried deep in there. So I think we'll have it for a while, and I would guess eventually it might.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like Slate and UMG right now. Slate's still there if you want to work with that, or if you want to work with UMG. I mean, sequencer is going to be the one we push people towards because it's just more user-friendly and intuitive. And Matinee's still there for doing some of the nitty-gritty stuff if you want to work with that, but sequencer is definitely the way to go. How easy will it be to get smoother camera curves now? We kind of touched on that a little bit with the rail. So
I think it's improving every day.
Yeah.
I think we're,
and the keyframe stuff, I'd like to do another Twitch stream on that. Maybe where we dig into the curve editor and start playing with that.
Sure,
that would be really, really cool.
Yeah, that one's like, as I mentioned earlier, it's a kind of a thing of subtlety. So.
All right, we got about 10 minutes. Let's get to some of these newer questions. Is Sequencer going to have a way to import camera animation from another 3D package?
There you go. Yeah.
I didn't know that one was coming. Nice. Yes, actually, we just did it.
So, we just did it. Yeah, that was that. I believe that came from it was mocap to Maya, then into.
That was the word for that.
Yeah. For some of them, I think one of them was hand keyed. But anyway.
Right.
Yes.
Do you still plan to incorporate basic animation tools, not anything too advanced? Say, for example, I have two characters in a scene. One was pacing back and forth. This is a long question. While talking to another one, I have the animations, but character A is not looking in the direction of character B. Is there a way to move character A's head so he's looking at character B?
So yes, and the reason why we need to support this is because when we're doing previs so we need to create a new cinematic or something, and we want to be able to easily, without having to bother the animation team, basically pose a character, and even if it's for still frame or be able to animate it. So the answer is yes at some point.
And as with Unreal, there are always a ton of different ways to do things. If you really wanted to, you can go into the animation layer editing, and there's a how-to for this as well that I wrote. Which basically allows you to alter an animation, so you can do the head movement in the actual animation itself if you'd like. But again, if we could do it through sequencer down the road, that would also be
I think awesome. Having a really easy way to do it, I think it'd be great.
So we're getting into some more new questions here. Is there a way to make sequencer launch a game instance, like it's recording a video but without recording a video? Sometimes it only work on runtime, for example.
You might be able to do something interesting with that with just through the event tracks. I didn't fully read this through, but like just from my initial gut reaction on this, is that we can obviously launch stuff through an event track in here.
Right.
Potentially. So depends on what we're going to use it for. That might take a little more. Did you have a thought on that?
No, actually, I haven't actually tried to do that yet. I'm not quite sure. I would have to look into that a little bit more. Look at this one. What's the advantages of using the crane instead of just keyframing the camera position without the crane?
Okay, so that is a question I asked. I was like, all right, cool. We got this crane thing, and what's the difference? I think the difference is especially for people who aren't experienced using cranes. I think you get a very strong sense of what a crane can and can't do. Mm-hmm. The other thing is down the road, as we calibrate, as we refine these tools. I think it will be useful for the film industry because the film industry can come in and say, oh, this is the type of crane that we'll be using on the set for a technical viz or whatever it is. And the goal, I think, is to make these cranes, just like we did with the cameras. Mm-hmm. I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe the end goal is to make sure that the things like the cranes that we have in the world, if you used it, the cranes that we have in the CG world would be identical to the ones in the real world, so you can do your previs and everything else with those actors. And overall, I think sometimes it's a little easier to get really nice movement out of these out of these tools. And I'm going to add
Yeah,
one other
from
thing,
what
and
I've
then
seen,
then I'll shut up. But the other thing that's cool that's coming is that right now, when you saw us do this, we added a crane, and we attached a camera to it, and we pulled all that in. All that should be automated, and it should really the overall goal with that is to make a single actor that you pull in, and then if you want to separate it past that point, that's fine.
Yeah.
But instead of doing all this attaching and all
Yeah.
that type of stuff, having a single actor.
Oh
would be
yeah,
good.
yeah. Just for workload purposes, yeah. Let's see. Did you guys talk about shots and takes last time?
We did.
You did?
We
Okay, yeah.
absolutely.
Somebody had a question about would this allow to repeat the same scene from two camera angles, like a retake or a shot?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can do that. You can take the exact same
Super,
shot
Yeah.
and use it the exact same shot twice if you want, and just put different segments of the shot. Or you can do it through takes, where you just take a separate take,
Yeah.
and that way you can set up a whole array of cameras and basically cut between the cameras that you have if you
Yeah,
want.
and you can easily swap between them if you like one versus the other.
Yeah, yeah.
The take system is pretty cool. Let's see. Time. Rendering of a scene to a file be possible in the future. To make some mixed reality videos in the engine. We kind of talked about this one a little bit. So the question was, will rendering different layers of a scene to a file be possible in the near future? They'd like to make some mixed reality videos in the engine.
We could do green screen.
Yeah.
There's definitely features for the things that let us kick out green screen like stuff.
Yeah.
So I think the answer is yes on that.
Something that we haven't tried yet. It could be a good how-to or series down the road, trying to do something like that.
Sure.
Let's see. Let's go with what's a small thing in Sequencer that makes you guys almost squeal with excitement?
Do you want me to start with that?
It makes me almost squeal with excitement. Well, one for me would probably be the gameplay recording stuff, which I wanted to show here. There's a how-to on this. We were going to try to show it here with Paragon assets. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the build up and running with Paragon assets, so it could be something that we do in a future stream. But recording,
I think it'd be cool to show, man.
Yeah, recording sequences is super easy, and the how-to will kind of walk you through that. It's not in 4.11. Hopefully, it'll come before 4.12, but it's super easy to just record any kind of gameplay, and it spits it out as a level sequence with all your transform, everything that you do is right there, and then you can create a scene around that. That's probably one, and then the other one is the take system and being able to rearrange and arrange tracks very, very easily. It's just something you couldn't do with Matinee before, and it's like a traditional video editor at that point. So those are the two big ones for me.
Yeah, the stuff on the gameplay capture, I think everybody who sees it, including me, was just like, "Whoa, is that actually happening? How are you guys doing that?"
Yeah.
So I think this would be really exciting, especially when we show a little bit of Paragon stuff and show the
the
recording.
replay system in Paragon, you'd be able to take those and put those into Sequencer and then edit those. So that's.
For me, I think the thing that I'm really excited about is I feel like I'm working with a little more like film type of tool now. But when we're making cinematics, that we've got so many tools that we can actually do all this really cool stuff that in the past seems like we could do, but it was usually it was a little frustrating because it took longer to do. And now you can do stuff that's like, this is all I want to do. I want to be able to move shots around, and I just need to reframe this thing and get through the sequence and see how it plays. And now this sequencer makes that so easy to do. And so I feel like it's much more like working with a professional film tool, and it is because we've got all this stuff in here. So that's one of the things I'm excited about. And I'm also excited about where it's going. Like the thing is, like, we just released this, as far as I know. And I mean, for in this,
it's still experimental,
right? It's still experimental. And from all our discussions internally and working on projects and stuff, like this thing has a lot longer, lot farther it can go. And so I'm really excited about seeing where all that goes with this. So.
Yeah, and to add to that, because this is still experimental, if you guys have any questions, concerns, or features or things that you want to see from your own personal experience with it, feel free to post it on the forums and our documentation pages as feedback or feature requests, things like that. We can bring it to the attention of the guys here, and we can investigate if that stuff's possible and what we can do to accommodate your requests. So, yeah, the forums are your friend. Let's see, I think we're right on time, actually. I know there's a couple more questions in here that I can answer on the forums specifically. I want to thank Grayson for taking the time to sit with me here. It's been very educational for me as well, hopefully for you guys as well. That's going to do it for this stream. We'll see you next time, and we'll have some more good stuff for you, according to Ian, hopefully, setting up the next stream. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.